My name is Monk Rowe for the Phileas Jazz Archive, and I'm pleased to have Frank Tiberi with me today. And I want to congratulate you on your lengthy and productive career.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I feel very interesting, actually, just as a person of interest, I suppose. Just I mean, I've gone through many years, and I don't really think that I can really provide anything for anyone, but we'll see.
I think we'll accomplish that. I want to start. There's a lot of things, of course, on the internet about you, and here's one quote I rather stumbled upon on the internet, and a saxophone player who said, "When I think of Frank Tiberi, I think of the first track on the Giant Steps LP from Woody Herman, La Fiesta. I had to memorize and play that Frank Tiberi solo. Wasn't easy."
Yeah, well, I've heard that before.
Yeah, who said it was supposed to be easy?
Now that the Giant Steps, actually, the chorale. I don't know whether Dennis Sandoli. Have you ever heard of him from Philadelphia? He was one of those, really very personal players, and I was studying from actually John Coltrane studied from him for 3 years, actually. Dennis Sandoli was a guitar player, but that's I wrote that chorale while I was playing with him, and of course, I mean, Bill Stapleton and I collaborated on that and wrote the Giant Steps.
Hmm. I was listening to it earlier today, and those opening chords, the harmonized.
That's the one, yeah.
Yes, I was trying to think at the time. This was, of course, pre-finale or Sibelius. Do those chords have a conception behind them from one to the next?
Well, it's been so long, that I created it, actually, and all I do right now is just to appreciate listening to it. No, they were just uh, with added. Uh, I don't know how you arranged it, actually, but how you put things together and they sound fine. It's hard to really distinguish exactly what the chord would be. You know.
True. They don't always need names.
No, that's true.
Yeah. As I said, pre-finale, when you can't hear things back, I think there's nothing like that first experience. You write a chart, you go to all the trouble, perhaps you copy your own parts, you pass it out, and that first time you hear it is rather unforgettable. At least it has been for me.
Well, I've experienced that by writing the one that Joe Zawinul, actually, how he played the Cottonelita on the synthesizer, and I divided it up for the whole band. And that is the thing in which I really appreciated that I was able to really tackle, put it that way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I wrote Countdown. Of course, another thing is which was one of my pride arrangements, that I really cherish, actually. And also, I know Stan Getz, I wrote the Thailand for him, and that was another thing which was never really distributed. But these are things that I appreciated. Actually, I only would write for myself if I had the soul. I know it's a little selfish, but I'm not really considered an arranger like John Fetchuk or Alan Broadbent. I mean, you had Gary Anderson. I mean, these are really great arrangers. That's Bill Stapleton, Tony Clactor. These are all fellas that really went right through the band. They just stayed for a while, and especially Alan Broadbent. And I mean, God Almighty, he's written some great things.
Yes. Let me take you back. I'm interested in the very start of your musical career, and I believe I read that taking up music was partly a practical thing, a family decision. You were helping make money for the family. Is that correct?
Well, at 15, my father died through an accident, actually, when I was 12, And at 15, I was in a club, and ironically, I was singing Caledonia and playing the woodchopper's ball, with a small group with the trumpet and sax, and I was making $30 a week, and that was supporting the family. And I mean, right now it's about 5,000 a week. I mean, the times.
And you were playing the saxophone.
Oh yeah.
So I was looking at this would have been, let's say, 1947 or so.
Let's see. Maybe I got some notes over here, which that would be. Well, 48. Yeah, would it be that time actually? 48, I joined Bob Chester's orchestra.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the pop hits from 47. Around that time, you have people like Ted Weems and Sammy Kaye. I mean, you even had the Too Fat Polka by Arthur Godfrey. So my question is, if you can recall what your song list, what was the repertoire like back then?
It was pretty hard, really hard, actually. No, but I mean, the only thing I do is I can remember just a few things, such as Frank Rossellino was my roommate, and of course, I mean, what Bob Chester did was, his wife owned the Fisher Body Company, and he was just carrying along like right on through. And every time that he wanted to play the saxophone, he would stop and call the guy, which would be me, to come up and do the solo. But he was joking all around. Actually, he was just riding around with a town and country car, and as I say, he was just not wasn't playing at all, and but he did own a saxophone.
He owned a saxophone. What was traveling like at that time playing on this band?
I'll tell you that. It was a 35 Chevy. It was 2 seats in the front and 3 in the back. And we traveled with our horns, and we had our suits on because we never knew when the U-Haul was going to really come to the gig. But the gigs that we played over there at that time actually was like opening up parking lots and fairs, county fairs, and that was it. Actually, there were no ballrooms, that you could view like in later years, like the Atlantic City, where you have the ballrooms at the in Asbury Park. You had ballrooms actually, but at that time, things were very immature.
Did you have a singer in the group?
Not at that time, no.
That's interesting because after the big band era, the singers really became more popular, but you managed to just play the gig instrumentally.
Yeah, yeah. Now I wanted to mention, Flip Phillips was in the band too before I joined actually. So I mean, he carried a lot of great. That was the jazz band, that was considered the jazz band at that era.
What was jazz?
He had a lot. He had a lot. Of Jay Montrose was on the other end of the saxophone, and so we had all great players. Doug Medemy, I don't know whether you know.
I've heard that name. Yes.
Well, this is what we had all of them actually. Everybody was. He had a lot of great musicians in the band actually. A lot of them, went on to be really jazz players too, like Flip Phillips.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a thought at that time that this was going to be your life's work in one sense or another?
Yes. But of course, I mean, I left the band maybe about 8 months. And then of course, I mean, I've gotten married. That's right. Yeah. Got married at the age of 22. And there I just ended, I just started the life of trying to get gigs and work, and I did mostly musical shows in Philadelphia where I was a doubler, and I played the bassoon. Mm-hmm. And of course, I mean, I just was leading a domestic life.
Okay, so you were in one place for longer.
For what?
you were in one place for a longer time rather than getting in that 35 Chevy every night.
I lasted 8 months. That was it.
Okay.
I had to get away from it, actually.
Can you recall, you said you were making $30 a week. Was that with Bob Chester?
No, that was a club that I was working on
Okay.
on the weekend in my hometown.
So what were you kind of salary were you making with Bob Chester?
$80 a week. And that was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. And that was 1948.
So then you're playing shows in Philadelphia and um, required you to be a good reader, punctual, and good habits. Is that a decent way to put it?
Well, that required it, of course. I mean, because we had all the great shows come in to practice, and to rehearse and get things together before they go into New York. Now, the reason why I was, one of the doublers actually, because at the age of 30, maybe at the age of 30, I suppose, I studied with Salzschonbach on the bassoon. There were no bassoon players in Philadelphia. And they would always come in with a bassoon player. They'd rather not. So they would want to have, not the big bassoon players in New York come in, but I was, pretty much, selected for that actually. And at that time it was a good period, because if you played 4 instruments, you got paid individually for 4 instruments, until all the trumpet players started to pound you. They started to cut it off, at 50% and 25%. And but still it was really good, because I would do about maybe 3 or 4 shows a year, and that would certainly be a good income.
You're talking about doubler fees, and why was it that the trumpet players?
Because they had 1 instrument. Well, then maybe perhaps a flute horn too, but no, I had, like, I had baritone, a bassoon, and bass clarinet, and I was getting paid individually. So, I mean, the salaries were like $1,000 a week at that time. It was pretty good. I mean, as I say, they were all individual salaries until the unions cut it all down, and but still was good.
I see. But you had to haul those instruments in and keep them all working condition and
Of course, yeah, sure.
touching them every day, some people say.
Yeah, I'm still doing it right now. I got it right on the side of me, right?
And of course, you had to learn to read bass clef too for the bassoon.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Not a
yeah.
big deal.
No, that was the hardest thing actually. That's the only instrument that I had lessons on actually. Well, other than that, when I was 8 years old, I had lessons on the clarinet. Actually, it was a little an Italian lodge, and it was like 3 lessons a week and 2 rehearsals for the concert, and it was $33 a month. And I was ready for Curtis at the age of 12.
I see.
But before that, I heard Benny Goodman and Artie Shaw, and I says, no, that's not it. It's going to be jazz.
You're not going to go in the classical
No, I'm not.
Kurdish world. Yeah. How did you hear music? Of course, radio was a big thing. And did you amass a collection of like 78s when you were a kid?
45s too.
45s, yeah.
Sure, that was before the 78s, right? Sure. Yeah, but not as much. But the at that time it was 45s, and that was.
I'd really like you to clarify that for me, because you're saying that 45s were around before 78s?
Well, the 78s are the LPs, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
the large ones.
right.
Yes, yeah. I still have 45s that I bought at that time. Right now,
Okay.
there,
Yeah,
there were a limited amount of tunes on them. Actually, maybe perhaps one tune, and then of course the flip side, you get another tune over there. But that's if they were through, I'm going to go back there and check it. No, I got 45s. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, indeed.
They were
Yeah,
small.
they're smaller.
They were
Yeah, I
small.
was surprised to get a gift from a donation from someone of Glenn Miller 45s, and I didn't even know they existed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that.
Okay. Did you aspire to, while you were doing the shows, you're making a good living, but musicians oftentimes are, they seem like they're constantly looking for the next thing. Like what I'm doing now is pretty good, but I would really like to do. And did you have that feeling that you wanted to do something else?
No, not at all. No, I was just, particularly concerned of being able to do things that I planned out myself, and to be, to be actually, to use a concept which I'm doing right now, and I'm able to teach, to students, and to be, good in that area.
So what was it that,
I'd like to be a great arranger, but I'm not schooled for that actually, and I'm not. What I can do is the way I learned was to get all the charts and just see what it was, and then that was my, But it would have been good if I had another life. I think I would be an arranger. I mean a musician, arranger, like
yes,
such as all the cast that I mentioned.
I know what you mean. Arranging is a wonderful thing, and you can leave a legacy of charts for other people to play.
It's always good. I always respected even the arrangers, that backup singers and all that, what they do, I mean, that's a hell of a trait, I'll tell you that. I mean, you got to be really you got to be really talented to be able to really do that.
Were you still playing shows about the time that you became enamored with the music of John Coltrane?
Yeah, yeah, that was 1960.
Yes.
Mhm.
Can you recall that first exposure to him? Was it live or was it
It was
record?
live. It was live, actually. Well, but I had records before that, actually, but it was live, and I was really so interested actually in what he was doing, that I had to really I had to really find out what he was doing by recordings. Put it that way.
Yes. You felt inspired to carry gear to a place and try to get what he was doing on tape.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Did you go home and I mean this is sort of an obvious question, but you went home and like listened to those tapes over and over to
I still do. I still do, because he's done some different things, and that's always interesting to really. I mean, continually. That's the only. I only. I only hear a few things, and that's one predominantly, which I really do. Which I have on my iPhone.
at the time if you were listening to your reels and perhaps you had your saxophone out. I'm trying to form a question here about you're trying to determine what's Coltrane doing here. Is it new or is it just an extension of Charlie Parker? How did you put his playing into your head and make sense of it?
Well, I mean, he was he could really inspire, to a point by his playing. I mean, he was an impressionist. I mean, there's no question about it. Like he's, even if even if he didn't do, things in which you would sit down and try to analyze. He was, his anxiety while he was playing I suppose that everybody catches that. I'm sure of that.
Can you expand on the word anxiety?
Well, he can be able to really create to a point, that you can that it really, inspires you. He which pretty hard.
Were you trying to relate to his music from a chordal sense? Like, what is
Yes.
what? Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Well,
I can tell you the first time the first record that he made was the Countdown record, and of course, I mean that was the equal division to 12 tones, and of course, I mean that inspired me, um, and I have a concept, that I'm able to really use the parts of it and to insert it as the deceptive inserts. Actually, I just refer to it as, and I'm able to really create from the division to 12 tones, that they are ready to play the deceptive inserts before the chord is provided. Such as piano players do also as well. There's certain things in which you can be able to really have a little more fun. Playing a half step above, that's pretty well. And of course, you have your tritones, and but I mean, other than that, I mean, it's just extracting from the equal divisions of 12 tones, which is major third, major third, major third.
yes, he said you had done an earlier interview with All About Jazz, I think, and you said train sequences were in a 4-bar period. I've developed it to be used in a short period
That's it.
before a chord is struck.
That's it. I just said that.
You did, and
Well,
I'm trying to understand it a little better.
well, well, a related chord, if you were to be selected from the division of 12 tones, which is major third, major, and the related chord, you can play that in voice lead in, and of course go into the chord that is provided for you. Yeah, and there you can extract the upper partials of the dominant chords, which is the major triads. And I use major triads, and I use the chords, and I'm able to really just have a particular way, and be able to really construct it, and chronologically right on through from the beginning, and to be able to really teach someone to be able to really use it, and ultimately after they get it all together, um, it'll be like almost a second nature.
Interesting. Um, are there wrong notes or unintended notes in improvising that you hear your students? Let me rephrase. If you're listening to them and they're trying to do some of the things you've passed on to them,
Mhm.
what constitutes a wrong note?
Yeah. Well, um, not being able to really know their tonality. That was the most important thing, actually, because you're able to do deceptive inserts in a voice leading fashion, actually. But if you don't know your tonality, that distinguishes a wrong note. If you got to be very consonant, and as I say, so therefore if you don't know if you don't know your tonality, that's the part that I generally emphasize, actually.
Okay. If you're if you're forgive me for trying to get a handle on this a little more. If you're doing one of those sort of substitutions where you're playing for a moment a half step above the chord that's going on, but you just use the word consonant. So, how do those two things live together?
Well, you don't use the blue notes, actually, or so. You don't use flat nines, the short, if you use them, actually, you're going out of context. I mean, and if you use them, it should be just individually used that way. But I mean, so far as the concept is concerned, if you use them, actually, you're in the blue notes already. As I say, if you're doing a deceptive insert right before. So therefore, you have to be consonant like and just be voice leading. And so this way, if you do if you do sharp lines or flat fives or anything like that, actually, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I'm talking about a particular concept now. If you do them individually, certainly they work. If you play minor 7 flat 5, you play, and then you play the I have to say the loneliest monk thing, minor 7 flat 5, and and if that's a locrian, then it's simple to really address it as a major third below the dominant.
Okay, so I find it very interesting that you didn't attend the higher education jazz program. Is that correct?
No, yeah, it is correct. Yeah.
So this is all your own initiative, your curiosity, and your musicality that has enabled this kind of theoretical knowledge.
Yes. Since I've been doing it, actually, I feel comfortable. And of course, I mean, I do feel very comfortable even to being able to really teach it to students that come in that pay, that money to be taught or so. But I mean, these are performance students. The standard students that come in, of course. I mean, they want to get away by doing the exams, which, and of course, I mean, they're doing other things other than playing jazz. But I do give them the same process if they want to just play. And I always say, I know you'd like to be an arranger, you're doing this and all that, but you want to play, right?
Yeah.
So, the performance students. I pound a little more into them because I want them to get ahead real quick, and they are playing at the age of 18 and 19. I've got some students that pretty scary.
Are their saxophone gods the same as yours? Like Coltrane died some 55 years ago. Who do they look up to?
Right now, if the Coltrane.
Yes.
Well, I really don't know because I don't look up to anyone actually. My dear friends. I mean, I think the inspiration that I got from him actually just hasn't given me the interest to really hear anybody. I hear everybody, of course, but I mean, I'm talking about really digging in to any kind of solos that anybody plays. Right now, you have players right now that are just maybe playing just counterfacts and tunes, and they're playing trying to get as much in as possible. But it's nice to hear them, but I don't really get right into them actually.
What makes for, in your definition, your personal definition, when does somebody become an innovator in the jazz lexicon?
Well, I don't. I don't know what you mean by that question. I mean, everybody really, does want to make a CD. They want to really be heard. Of course, I mean, YouTube is out right now. It's unbelievable. There's so many that you hear so many players on YouTube. I guess their interest is to becoming, that way to be able to get gigs and I guess get into the stage of making the money. I suppose that would be it.
Right, making a money in jazz. That's
Well, it's hard.
Bit of an oxymoron, yeah. Um, Before we leave Coltrane, there was a fellow named Paul Currian who wrote some things about your recordings, and he just had this statement about Coltrane, and I wanted to read it and see if you have a reaction to it. Um, Coltrane was aiming for some kind of transcendence, a destination which many of his early fans were simply not interested in following him to, considering the reception given to his later recordings and performances. Did you follow John Coltrane's music all the way to its conclusion as a listener and a fan?
Well, my interest was actually, how he created this intense feeling, of playing. I mean, he was an artist. I mean, that way he was almost like he'd be able to really just delve on just one or two things, not intricate, but I mean to get that feeling of. I mean, I have some cuts, that he goes really. It's not analytically. It's not really a big thing, but I mean the creation that he really is applied. I mean, he was that was the thing. Actually, I suppose, and everybody does feel that way too when he plays.
Mm-hmm. What about his later, well, not specifically Ascension, but some of the LPs near the end of his life where were, I'm trying to think of the word, sometimes they sounded angry, over the top, with Pharoah Sanders and so forth. Did this still hold your interest?
No, no. Even in the club, actually, there were, what I got there's one thing that I don't have over here. The flute player would come in actually, and he would play, and that would be, and he wouldn't be able to do anything that Train did actually. It was a little embarrassing. I don't know.
You're not talking about Eric Dolphy.
Yes, I am.
Okay. You mean he could? That was a mountain too tall to stand next to, or something like that.
You think so?
Yes. Well, I appreciate your thoughts on him. And did you ever get to really meet him, have a conversation with him?
No. The most amazing thing is that every time I was there, he has never really come to the bar. Never. The only time I met him was he was outside, and McCoy Tyner, whom I engaged him, in a lot of gigs that I had, because at that time he was 18 years old, Philadelphia. But he was taking Train home, and the trunk was open, Train was there, and I happened to be there, and that's the only time I said hello. Never saw him other than that. And there are a lot of time. There's a lot of time in tapes that I do really have that I would expect him to come out and have a beer. Nothing.
Oh.
Never came out. Never came out. Never saw him.
Were you surprised at his passing?
Well, I certainly don't like to hear anything like that, but not at all. I don't know. I mean, there were the people, that in the condition that he was living, maybe perhaps you would realize that maybe wasn't good.
Yes. I was thinking to myself, John Coltrane and Woody Herman, and they are certainly not opposite ends of the spectrum, but normally you wouldn't connect those two things. So when you went with Woody Herman, you were already 40 years old, is that correct?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I decided to retire, and I spent 20 years on the road. That's a laugh.
yes, I was going to say, at 40 years, some musicians have said, "I've had enough of this," and so you were launched onto another part of your career, which lasted a long time.
Well, it was a thing that which I enjoyed right on through. Just Woody was, I was close to his vintage. One thing actually, and we did a lot of things together. A lot of restaurants I did. I would, I would, get restaurants, and I tell them, that they were good, and let's go, and everything was, it was, pretty well. I even cooked for him actually. I on the road. I was fed up with all the Holiday Inns that were going. It had a Coleman case, and I would I carry a saute pan with a three quarter pot, and every 3 gallon pot, and I would make sauce. And at one particular time, I did it, and the guys were playing football outside, and I was making the sauce, and I was making the spaghetti for them. These are things which, and of course, up in when we went up to an area like Montana or something like that, there weren't any good restaurants actually. Nothing was available, and I would go out and buy something, and I made it cook for them. That was really great.
Wow. I bet they appreciated that. You were like one of the older guys in the band, I would assume.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
When you took over the group, and by the way, I have to give Mr. Herman a lot of credit for um, being open-minded about adding new material.
That's the greatest part of that, actually. The reason why I stayed there for all of those years is because everybody came in. You take Tony Clack, the Alan Broadbent, Bill Stapleton, they all come in. They wrote what they wanted to, and he was just to prove it every time. And I mean, Alan Vazzuti, the trumpet player, he'd come in with a fire dance, and my tunes too. But he wasn't there when my tunes. Actually, I think so. No, I don't think he ever heard my tunes. No, but I mean, uh, Fed Shock, did a lot of arrangements also at that. Well, and they were great. Everybody was doing things that they liked, and we did. Before that, the band was playing like Richard Evans, MacArthur Park, and all that. And then I introduced the band with a bassoon and giant steps and countdown. Well, the countdown thing was, I think, the Monterey Jazz Festival, and I wrote it for 2 years actually. I could never really get it in because everything was planned, and all the sessions were planned. And but one day before, Woody comes up to me and he says, Frank, we need a hot number. I says, I got a hot number for you. And so we performed it. I mean, if you ever heard the tune, I don't know, just
Yes, I have. That's interesting. It was like, how much time did you get to rehearse it?
one day before. One day before. I mean, you know why? Because we had Stan Getz there. We had Diz. We had the Woody Shaw. We had Slide Hampton. Slide Hampton had 3 charts over there, and they were doing all the soloing, but the band didn't do anything. And so that's why he came up to me. And here I'm holding an arrangement that I made for 2 years, and do I have something hot for you? Oh, that was funny.
Had you actually heard it played before then?
No,
Oh, that's
no,
that's a bit of a. I
yeah,
know, like my charts, I always hear something. Oh boy, I have to fix that. Well,
no. And actually, if you listen to it, I've been using division to 12 tones, equal division to 12 tones on it. Actually, if you really and I incorporated all that actually.
mhm.
I mean, only they were only a couple of things that I wrote, but every time I wrote something, as I say, it was only for my solos.
I think I read that when a new person came on, that Woody would sort of give them a trial, would hire them for a period of time to see if they were going to fit in?
Well, he would, he would have them play, um, and of course, I mean, if they weren't good, at that time you can buy tickets at the airport right at the counter. So I mean, he would let them go. But one example was um, oh God, my friend. Uh, uh, I'm trying to think. Wow, really, uh, Joe, Joe, Joe Lovano. Joe Lovano was playing with a group, and then he was hired for the first night, and he sat in and he played and he got up and took a solo, and after the night was over, Woody come up to me and said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, did you hear his solo?" So he was there for 3 years. My dear friend.
Yeah, there's a marvelous video of you and Joe on Giant Steps. I think it's from '77 or so.
I know that
Yeah,
was.
and when I'm listening to that, sometimes I wonder, are you two fellas, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking the changes as they go by, or is there more of a direct connection between your fingers and something that you've internalized?
No, we're definitely thinking of the chords, of course. There's no question about that. And and performing more interval jumps, to make it really effective. That we were playing together. You're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we were like almost like trading, and it's a little it's encouraging to do something like that. That at that particular time, we were in Europe, and Europe, Europe, they can extend tunes like really long or so just at that particular time. And so I kind of figured, well, I extended it actually, and I didn't, I just went right on, and Woody was there with his hands down and just really enjoying it actually, and for that length of time to play a tune. Well, it was only was a trading thing at the end of a tune, of course.
Yes.
But and then Woody really enjoyed it actually. I kind of figured, well, it's Europe, so let's do it that way.
Because Europe had more hipper audiences?
Well, I mean, not hipper audiences, but I mean, we had times, when they play up until 8 or 9 in the morning. Actually, they're really into jazz. I mean, there's they particularly they really favor playing long.
Well, as long as you mention that, maybe I'll ask your opinion about the state of jazz in America at this point. We have hundreds of universities with fine jazz programs. Of course, you're part of one of the major ones. But on the other end, recording sales of recordings and live, the club scene has changed a lot. Do you have any opinions about where jazz is at right now?
Well, for the past 2 years, I mean, it's obvious that things have really closed right on through. That's the particular thing about even teaching jazz. We know where are they going to be playing, and to what to what area would they be getting into. Um, it's um, we at that time we when we were we were traveling and playing every night. It was always colleges and was always schools because they didn't have any bands, like as they have right now. Actually, I mean, in Berkeley right now we have 3 bands that are operating. And as I say, but at that time, but now right now that canceled us, the big bands. That was the thing that really right now canceled us. And so outside of the money that has to be paid, actually, for musicians.
Can I ask you to say that again? What was it that canceled you?
Um, the oh the what was I?
Maybe you were saying there was more of a market because the colleges did not yet have the bands of their own.
Exactly right. Sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
they didn't have any bands of their own. Actually, they didn't have that much of a curriculum, and the high schools also as well. They might have had a few musicians, but not jazz bands. And so a lot of them we got canceled, pretty much when I mean, who needs a Woody Herman band in Berkeley right now? Or I don't know that. Or other bands actually,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how Berkeley hires their bands. I think I think most of the bands have to really support themselves, and I think so. I don't know.
Are you able, or do you think it's even relevant to teach students about the bandstand, about professionalism, about getting a gig and keeping it? Or is that not even as relevant anymore?
Uh, well, at first, I mean, there are not any bands, that are operating right now. That you like as they were before. The musicians, would be going, going through, just switching to a lot of bands, and a lot of at that particular time. But you're talking about all the availability, all the the places that you can be able to really play or be hired actually. All the venues, such the Earl Theater. I mean, here in the Atlantic City Steel Pier, all these things are not operating right now. So these were the things in which everybody looked forward to be able to really go with a band like you're talking about um, the 400 bands that were operating next at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were also 400 local bands too, also that were operating. The
So all
Anyway,
the students that graduate every year from the universities, if they if they come and ask for your advice about making a living, do you have anything you can tell them these days?
well, I would say to the other other areas in the music business actually you can be able to really focus on too also as well. I mean, such as arranging and of course, I mean, there's um, an A&R man or as I say, always have something that you can really have on the side actually to because I don't it'd be pretty hard to really live as a jazz player unless you able to really get yourself a good group and a good agent and a good recording, a good CD, and a lot of distribution, and that takes time, but that works. That's the way that one has to really do it, that way. I mean, get all your things on YouTube. I mean, and then you play all the clubs in New York, or there are clubs. There are no clubs anymore in Philadelphia. That's the big drag. Just at that time, and it was the Blue Note, the Showboat, the Pepsi Musical Bar, and all that. They're not around. That's where. I'll give you just the Rendezvous. I remember on the Market Street, actually, in the afternoon, they have like some sort of a subtle jazz club. And I went in and I looked, and who was sitting on a high chair was Charlie Parker, and playing a plastic saxophone with his leg in the cast. I nearly fell over. I can't believe that, right?
Oh, was it an actual gig for him, or was he just like
He was up there, he was playing, yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah, it was like it wasn't a big show place or anything. It was just a local bar right in the center of town.
Mhm.
And here he was with a cast and plastic saxophone.
That's interesting because so many people, so many saxophone players did all they could to play like him, but I don't think the plastic saxophone was part of the routine.
No. But he could play anything. You can probably whistle, I suppose. They really sound good.
Yeah. When you were actually leading the Woody Herman group, did you find yourself having to be a disciplinarian?
I was pretty well straight. I can tell you that. Yeah. There were so many things that I had to really remember, and then we had cats, that we had that hadn't played with the band, and I would, have to have the and Mike Brignola, who was the road manager, he would, give me a sheet to be able to check out who's playing in what seat, and I would have to be looking at. Then I'd have to be leading. Then of course, I'd have to be leading the band and selecting the tunes also. But and that was a thing in which, as I say, I had to be really, really straight, and I wouldn't drink any wine or anything before that. It would always have to come after. No, it was as I say, it was a. I wouldn't even eat before that, actually, because I didn't, I just felt to be that way, actually.
Mm-hmm. Did you get the best seat on the bus?
The front one, yeah. Not when Woody was there. Woody had the front best seat. Yeah.
Yeah. It's too bad he had such bad experience with finances and so forth. Do you think it wore him down?
No, it didn't even faze him. Really didn't. He never really complained about it or anything. No, never. He just went on with. He loved this cheese sandwich at night after the gig, and he had this vodka on the top of in the bin in the bus, and that was his really. He always looked forward to that. No, of course, no, he never complained about anything, about any of all his money or anything like that, and all the problems that he went through. They got his house and all that sort of thing, up in Beverly Hills. I don't know. No, he never felt really, that it was bothering him too much.
It's a good way to be.
He just loved to play. He really, and he was a great clarinet player at the beginning. He played a lot of good things. He's and his alto playing is. He admired Johnny Hodges, and he was just as slurpy as Johnny. He could tie a note and sail up to it.
I think there's a good chance I saw you with the band around could have been 69 or 70 in Rochester, New York. It was out. It was outside, and I always remember that Woody played the alto without a neck strap. It's funny the things you remember.
Oh God, I don't know. Listen, we played at a club one time, and they had 5 dancers, and they grabbed the one was falling, and they grabbed his horn, and and the neck was like this, and all I did was close the octave thing, and I gave it to him, and he was he was just playing that just as if nothing really happened.
What's the worst? Did you ever? Is there anything in your memory like a train wreck type of gig, either from the travel or logistics, or someone lost their music? Does anything like pop into your head?
No, not really. No, no, everything was pretty well organized. I think Mike Brignola had a lot of things to do about that. Actually, he would always, the music was always, taken care of, and everything was pretty well organized. I never had any problems like that.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah,
You mentioned that you are looking at a lot of notes to yourself
a lot of notes.
for this interview, and I wonder if there's something I haven't asked about that you'd like to.
Well, I was with Benny Goodman,
Mhm.
and of course he called me Cheech. And if he called you by your nickname, then he liked you. I mean, there were a lot of players with me actually: Kenneth Burrell, Ruby Braff, Doc Sevison. And of course, we went on the road with Irby Green. These were these are some of the things actually. But another thing actually, I was a good repairman too. There's Benny Carter. Every time we did the Norwegian, he would always call me in his room, and I'd have to change a pad. And this happened twice. Even that. And Jerry Mulligan, had a gig of a concert, and we were following him in New York, and one of the players, said the post on his horn broke on the baritone. He couldn't play, and one of the players said, "Frank is coming in," because he knew me. He played with our band. And he said, when he comes in, he'll fix it. I did. And I grabbed it and I soldered it post, and he played.
That's a great way to
Yeah,
to be in good with other musicians. Save their horns.
I did. Yeah, I fixed Al Cohn's horn also as well. And actually just, let's see, up in, I got another note over here to see if I can remember. Let's see. Wow. The reason why I went with Benny Goodman was Bordeaux Gray. He liked the way
Wardell
Bordeaux.
Gray.
And so I played maybe like him at that time. Actually, I was sort of Zoot, Zoot and Al. And that's the reason why I got called. A friend, a photographer named Bootsy, told Benny that you want to hear this guy or something like that. That's when I got the gig over there. But what's his name? Charles Lloyd. I'm in Pompeii, Italy, and we had a night off over there. And I get a knock on the door, and it's Charles Lloyd, and his BK was hanging. He says, "Frank, I got a gig tonight, and can you do something for me?" And I fix his horn too. Anyway,
Charles Lloyd.
Charles Lloyd. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful connection that you heard Benny Goodman, which made you take an off ramp from the classical world into jazz, and then you got to play with him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There are some exciting moments also.
Was he as absent-minded as many of those stories indicate?
Well, at that stage of the game, I think he was a little old, and he wasn't, just as you know, great as he was. Actually, he was just. But I mean, it was only like the concert that we had around, it was an outside concert, with the group, with a small group. We had a couple of concerts with a small group and a band also. But after that, he didn't really attend, too much. It was Irby Graham that took the band out on the road, and it was the big Benny Goodman band.
Yeah.
But
And how much playing are you doing yourself these days?
well, George and I have a concert going up in Rochester, the
Oh
jazz.
yeah, that's a beautiful jazz festival they have.
Yeah, John Nugent is, yeah. And then there's a club over here, which is a Chinese place or Japanese place. It's called a Monk. We got a gig over there actually, and something else came up, and I have a few, three. So I keep myself, pretty much occupied and practicing.
Yeah, I'm looking at a quote here from an earlier interview. Even at my age, I have a duffel bag packed and I'm ready to go.
Right. My age, right? Oh boy, it's a little hard actually, but I don't really feel as if I'm in the stage of I'm in the 93 year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 93. Of course, I'm not 93 years old until December, and I just it's hard to move. It's hard to move, of course, but I just function just as well as I feel that I'm 60 or 70. I mean that I don't really feel I don't feel anything. I don't really accept it. That I'm that age. And I walk on glass, of course. I mean, I'm really careful.
Yeah. To wrap up, if you had the opportunity, if let's say an author was doing a jazz biography book and he wanted to do a piece on you, sort of like the Encyclopedia of Jazz, what would you like to see written about your own playing? You see descriptions of people's playing, and I'm wondering if there's something that would please you if it was written.
Well, it might be that maybe perhaps I can be able to really do something different, and that they can enjoy it, and they can be just as concerned in the way I was, like with Train. I mean, there are so many great players right now, even as well. But I try to, keep myself in a position where I'm able to even enjoy myself and play some of the things that, through my concept, as I say, some of the things that I, creating over here and trying to, and teaching, I mean, if you see my laptop over here, it's loaded with all studies.
that you things that you've written down and that you've worked out in your head, and then you've written them down for other people to use.
They're all on Finale. They're all on. They're all on Band in a Box actually, and I have another program and better sounds. I have all and I have all the soloists that have performed all the tunes that I have in there, and I have also I have many of the Lenny Tristano tunes. I have about 20 or 25, and I write them all. And I write them all in the concert, alto, and tenor, where many teachers only give you a concert part, and they say, "Go ahead and play jazz." I can't even. If I saw a concert part with chords, it takes it away. It takes away from me actually. It's just I got to remember what the chord was, and I got to transpose it, and then I got to play. So it's not really good.
That's a big added step.
It is. I'm telling you, that's it. Especially, I mean, look, I can transpose alto parts, but if I had to really transpose alto chords, never, never.
Yeah. You just gave me a flash. I attended a improv workshop after I graduated from college, and this fellow's approach was this was in a room full of improvisers. Some people had never even done it. And he passed out giant steps in the concert key, and he expected everybody to play it. And the results were not pretty, I can tell you that.
Never, never. I know that. I know that even just the other last week, I had a student want to play a tune, and he said, "I got this." Well, he had the tune, and but the backtrack was on his iPhone, and all the backtracks that I do actually are pretty much with strings and everything and all that, a little more encouragement. And I mean, and he had a concert part, and I says, "No," I says, I'm not going to play a concert because I don't like it. I wouldn't be able to really perform exactly what I know. I'd have to transpose it first, and then I got to remember some of the concept things that I teach. Can't do it. I mean, you can if you see a C chord, maybe you know it's a D. But I mean, if you go like a minor 7 flat 5 or major 7 flat 5 or something like that, just. And then, of course, I mean, there are devices that I use for them incidentally. That in other words, you don't practice on a minor 7 flat 5. It's a Locrian.
Right.
So so you practice on the dominant, and you don't practice on the major 7 flat 5 because I mean, one tone higher, it's a dominant.
I see. Well, if we ever do a gig together, I'm going to remember to bring transposed parts for you.
Right. But I do. I mean, it's a lot of effort, but I enjoy doing it actually. So this way, they're able to really, and everybody, most of the piano players or most of the teachers do give out the concert parts, and they don't. I don't. It holds back. It really does.
Yeah, gets in the way.
Oh yeah, it really does.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today. It was really enjoyable to speak with you. And as I opened up with, you've made a real contribution to this music, and I appreciate it, as do many people.
Well, I hope I did, comfort you in being able to really explain some things actually. And it's a pleasure.
All right. Thanks a lot.